The summer that thunderheads loomed over the valley every evening, I returned to my hometown of Gravers Bend as a reluctant son. Dad had died in the spring, leaving behind the hardware store, the sagging house on Quarry Hill, and an attic crowded with crates whose unfinalized receipts fluttered like dying moths. I came in a gray rental car, unshaven, suited for city cubicles rather than the red clay roads of my childhood, expecting no more than the tedium of probate and the affliction of memory. What I found instead was the bridge. You must understand what storms mean in Gravers Bend. The town sits in a cleft between two ridges, a corridor that funnels weather the way organ pipes accelerate breath. Thunder doesn't roll there, it ricochets. Rain is seldom gentle. It pounds grain shot from the black bag of the sky. People grow cautious with roofs, and children learn early to measure the seconds between flash and bang. In that crucible of noise, the oldest legend of the valley was hammered, that at the height of a storm, a bridge appears over the ravine east of town, a place you won't find on any road map because it exists only in our weather's most violent moments. They say the bridge is woven of rain itself, ropes of silver water twisting into planks, rails and towers, and if you step onto it, the wind will ferry you into the very marrow of the cloud. There, where lightning strikes brightest, you will meet the shadow you cast in the world below, and if your shadow survives the forging, it might step back with you, and it might not. The reports vary. I knew the tale the way one knows nursery rhymes, automatically, without skepticism or belief. Dad recited it when gutters overflowed and the lights flickered. Mom used to add, "Embroidery." "The bridge hums like tuned glass," she'd whisper, tucking me in as the house quivered under thunderclaps. Hey! It thrilled me as a boy. It embarrassed me as a teenager. As an adult, I filed it in the same dusty drawer I reserved for other folk nonsense. Or I would have, if Dad's final ledger hadn't cited a date, 2 names, and the terse note. Bridge scene, 3:17 a.m.m., Survivor 1. I discovered the addendum on my 4th night home, hunting through his accounts for anything salvageable. I stared at the line until fatigue blurred the ink into a bruise. He'd labeled the column Inventory Discrepancies, but who inventories the impossible? I closed the book, cracked a beer, and decided insomnia required a drive. The storm outside was the worst yet, pitching the rental's headlights across curtains of water, as if the rain itself were a moving wall. The road curved past the old mill, the cemetery, the Baptist church, whose steeple was a lightning rod in every sense. Somewhere near the turnoff to the quarry, the wipers failed to keep pace, and I pulled onto the narrow shoulder to wait out the deluge. That's when I saw it. A fissure in the storm opened, an instant's pause, and the world beyond the windshield clarified. Low in the ravine to my right, suspended above the black roaring creek, an arch, a blue-white light, spanned nothing to nothing, as precise as ironwork and as insubstantial as breath on glass. It lasted perhaps 3 seconds, long enough to brand itself into the reel of images we call proof. When darkness closed again, I found I was already out of the car, rain battering my scalp, ankles sliding in floodwater toward a trail I hadn't walked since boyhood. Memory steered. Reason lagged behind. The flash that had revealed the bridge also illuminated a figure on the near bank. A woman, hair plastered to her skull, coat whipped like torn sails, standing exactly where the planks must begin when the storm wills them solid. She didn't see me. Her gaze was fixed upward, searching the sky the way sailors hunt for stars. A second shock of lightning blazed. The bridge reappeared, now fully formed from bank to bank, cables of spinning water twisting around axes of living light. The sight froze me, because the woman had stepped onto the first plank, and because the plank betrayed no give beneath her weight. I opened my mouth to shout, when ripped the words away. She continued, quick but deliberate, the gait of someone reciting a memorized prayer. 30 paces, and she was half lost in storm fog. The bridge seemed to billow, inhaling and narrowing where gusts struck. Every few seconds the valley lit with silent explosions, and I glimpsed her again, ascending now. The bridge was no level line, but a ramp angled skyward, disappearing into a corrugated quilt of black clouds. Then both woman and bridge vanished, swallowed by night. The world collapsed into ordinary darkness and the groan of the creek below. I stood alone, lungs heaving, shoes suctioned by mud. Only then did I realize I'd carried Dad's old brass flashlight. I don't remember retrieving it from the glove compartment. Habit or fate, perhaps. I would have charged after the woman if a greater terror hadn't taken hold, the fear of what might return if she did not. So I staggered back to the car and sat trembling until dawn ferreted lavender streaks through the east. The storm had moved on, and with it the bridge. I told myself the vision was exhaustion. But Dad had written it down, and now I had seen it too. 2 witnesses, more compelling than one. I resolved to learn if the woman made it home, or if she made it somewhere else. Gravers Bend is small. By noon I had a name, Marla Beck. 45, elementary school art teacher, widowed last year. Several people saw her leave Pablo's Bar and Grill during the height of the storm. Nobody saw her return. Her car remained in the lot. Sheriff Allerton organized a search, but the ravine road was flooded, and the mountains sputtered with mudslides. By evening, gossip outran fact, and the legend of the storm bridge awoke from its decade-long nap. I tried to maintain outsider objectivity, rationalist armor soldered in my years away, but something had cracked when I watched Marla ascend a staircase made of rain. I joined the search, if only to persuade myself that ordinary tragedy, not mythic architecture, had swallowed her. We combed the creek, the brambles, the forest margins where swollen tributaries gnash through root systems no trace. 2 nights later, the storms renewed. Sheets of lightning barred the horizon. I found myself outside again, as if the squall had hooked a line through my sternum. I parked intentionally by the ravine this time. Every fiber of muscle insisted on caution. A deeper filament of will propelled me forward. I reached the same knuckle of land where Marla had stood. The bridge was not yet visible, but the air crackled, ion-rich, like the breath before speech, and then thunder knelled, and I felt the plank under my boot. There was no flash, no cinematic unveiling, simple, quiet arrival, as if the structure had always existed but only now welcomed proof of its presence. Water scrolled along its cables in never-repeating braids. Droplets the size of pearls flew off into dark. The bridge was real enough to hum beneath a hammer of rain. A step, then another. Beyond the 3rd plank, the ravine fell away, its depths foaming. I inhaled storm and exhaled doubt. The walkway pitched upward, subtle but constant, a grade designed for ascent. I climbed. In seconds or hours, time lost the arithmetic of seconds once I left the ground. The valley faded behind a vapor curtain. The bridge entered cloud. Grayness swallowed even the railings. What spurred me forward was not bravery but momentum, the logic that dictates you follow whatever road removes you most emphatically from the place you began. My lamp died after 50 feet. Lightning assumed its duty. Inside cloud, light has no source. It bleeds from gauze. Each flash revealed the shape of the vapor corridor, vertical walls moving in slow torsion as if titanic gears ground right beyond vision. The bridge planks glimmered and stilled. I half expected them to dissolve at any moment, but they held. When the first fork of lightning struck the cables, noise vanished, or perhaps it was so violent a concussion that my ears stitched silence to protect themselves. The impact threw a shockwave through the floor, yet I remained upright, mesmerized by the aftermath. A web of blue fire racing along the rails, filling etchings too fine for mortal carpentry. Where the energy pooled, it birthed a silhouette, slender, feminine, its edges trembling with static. The shape turned toward me. I recognized Marla Beck. She wore the same coat, though now it clung to her like a second epidermis of light. Her face held no features, just a general geometry of nose, lips, orbital hollows. But I knew her by posture, by the tilt of her head I'd glimpsed from below. She raised an arm. I answered with my own. In the next flash, a second silhouette sat beside her. It was her duplicate, but inverted, negative space carved from the lightning's brilliance, darker even than the absence of light around it. When Marla's outline moved, the shadow echoed a fraction of a second later, as though rehearsal preceded performance. They tethered each other, brightness and void, Siamese halves welded shoulder to shoulder. Together they approached me, my rational mind shredded. Something more primitive directed my limbs, fight, flight, or religious prostration. I tried the first. I reached for, what? A weapon? A word? My arm refused. I considered the second, run, but behind me stretched only fog and the probability of falling. The third option took me. I knelt. Marla's bright, half-crouched before me, extended a hand made of sparking filaments. It didn't burn. It was cold, like air just before snow. When her fingers touched mine, my body flickered. I saw, as if watching me from the rail, my own silhouette ignite, nervous system drawn in living wire, bones rendered transparent, organs pulsing neon. And then, trailing me like a cloak stitched from pure starlight, a second figure coalesced, my own shadow double. It matched my posture, but I felt no control over it. Rather, it governed a quiet space in me that logic never reaches. I understood then the forging. Lightning sculpts not from flesh, but from the idea of a person, the intangible ledger of choices, secrets, and attentions. Storm heat tempers it. Electricity hammers until mirror and maker separate. What returns to earth is a duet, inseparable, until some later calculus splits them again. Marla's shadow spoke in a voice like leaves soaking in water. Not words precisely, but a texture of meaning. Come. She moved higher along the bridge. The dark double glided at her side, sometimes leading by a stride, sometimes lagging, an unsteady partnership. My own new twin rose with me, tethered by an invisible umbilicus at the spine. Together we continued the climb. Clouds lost density. The air felt thin enough to brittle. I glimpsed lightning, not as jagged spears, but as luminous serpents, corkscrewing horizontally across the saturate billows. Each pulse cast 3 shadows, Marla, her twin, and mine. And each time the shadows grew more substantial, more certain of their outlines, while our flesh forms gained a translucence. I saw veins, then the suggestion of windowed ribs. The exchange was a gradual negotiation. For every piece of ourselves we relinquished, the shadows assumed equal mass, symmetry, and metamorphosis. I wondered if this upward march had an apex, or if the bridge elongated to match limitless ambition. I had begun to feel less like a body and more like a memory. A collage of sensations tied loosely by habit. And memory cannot sweat, cannot ache, it only persists. That realization lured a dangerous comfort. If I walked long enough, perhaps I could offload everything heavy. Grief for Dad, the unresolved fights with lovers, the accountant's boredom of my city life, and let the shadow wear them instead. But what, then, would remain of me? A husk or freedom? The question splintered when a new flash revealed what lay ahead. The clouds thinned into brilliance, a wall of light so vast it had horizon. No distinct sun or combustion source. It was as if the sky itself found a second, brighter sky pressed against it. Countless bridges converged there, threads in a radial web, and on each a pair walked, a human, bright or dim, and its opposite. Some pairs merged seamlessly until only one remained. Others wrestled, wrestling becoming dance, dance becoming violence. Where conflict endured, the light wall erupted in localized storms, discharging forks that scattered pairs back down their causeways like sparks off an anvil. Those who merged slipped through the brilliance and vanished. I slowed. My shadow surged, tugging to continue. It was stronger than me now. I could feel its urgency like a current in the blood. Marla and her twins had almost reached the threshold. She turned, luminous eyes pleading. I took another step and was pulled twice as far, weightless, the tether no longer elastic, but commanding. My autonomy thinned until it was only suggestion. I panicked. Lightning hammered a bastion within me, clarifying one anchor. Dad's ledger line survivor. 1. He had witnessed the bridge. Why hadn't he climbed? Or had he? The senses of survivor suggested a gamble whose cost he tallied in sorrow. Failure was possible, survival was not guaranteed. But which outcome did he fear? That the shadow would replace him, or that it would refuse? I planted my foot and refused movement. The shadow jerked. Pain cleaved my skull like ice. I heard the other half speak inside me, a voice exactly my own, but more honest. I can finish what you cannot. No, I said aloud, and in saying no, I realized why Dad wrote the note. To warn. Choice is the fulcrum. Bridge, lightning, forging, ritual mechanisms. But what crowns them, the shadow whispered promise. I bear all your sorrows. Let me cross and shed them. But the offer was a trick. The burden isn't lifted, it's outsourced, and what remains isn't freedom, but vacancy. Without sorrow, joy calcifies. Without weight, form dissolves. The price of lightness is to be unable to touch the world at all. Dad had counted that arithmetic. Marla reached the threshold. Her shadow stepped first into the wall. It passed through easily. Marla hesitated on the verge, fingers trembling. I saw her mouth shape a prayer, or maybe a question. The light answered by brightening. She took a breath and her shadow yanked her. She resisted. A keening sound tore from the seam of their tether. The wall rippled into storm. Lightning curved back, struck the shadow, unskinning it from her. Shadow reeled, fractured like glass. Marla collapsed to her knees. The pieces of shadow recoiled down the bridge. Some flung past me, dissolving into passing cloud. A smell of burnt ozone and poured iron filled the air. Marla remained, alone, blinking at the luminous wall she had not entered. She looked less radiant, more substantial, rain-soaked coat, scraped knees, puffy eyes. She saw me and shook her head violently. "Don't!" she shouted, though thunder devoured the word. She beckoned me away from the portal. My shadow recoiled, sudden as a slug of mercury, but did not detach. It raged in silent convulsions around me, tugging, pleading, cursing in electric tongues. I turned my back to the wall. My shadow's pull weakened with every step downward. Storm aftershocks spattered us, but the bridge remained whole. Marla joined me. Together we descended. Gray resolved gradually into darker gray. The valley's silhouette emerged and the rumble of the creek regained frequency. At the final planks, before earth welcomed us, my shadow sloughed off like a wet cloak. It hovered limply above the walkway, still linked by some gossamer band to my spine. In the pulse of a final lightning bolt it shrank, twisting, and condensed into a bead of brilliance that fell through the planks, and was gone. Cold flooded the hollows it vacated. I stumbled onto mud, knees buckling. Marla caught my elbow. She smelled of storm, salt, electricity, cedar sap cracked by wind. We said nothing until the bridge dissolved behind us, mist wicking into ordinary rain. Night hushed. She spoke first, voice ragged. "I thought I wanted—" She didn't finish. Instead she asked, "Did yours have a voice?" "Yes," I answered. "What did it promise?" "Everything I was afraid to want." My teeth chattered, but not from cold. "And yours?" "The same." She managed a brittle laugh that shivered the air between us. "What now?" "I think," I said slowly, "we get very dry and very drunk, and we never speak of this except to each other." "To each other," she echoed, sealing the compact. We began the trudge toward the road. Our shoes squelched mud, and every flash of sheet lightning etched our forms in silver negative along the ravine wall. No shadows accompanied us, just two damp humans heavier by some grief we dared reclaim, lighter by illusions we refused. The storms continued that summer, but neither of us ventured out during the worst. We grew close, as survivors do when they've glimpsed subtraction's abyss. Some evenings we sat on Dad's back porch, sharing the silence that follows lightning, and felt an echo of longing, that precarious seduction of unburdening. But we stayed seated, hands wrapped around coffee or each other. We endured the wait because it proved we existed. When probate concluded and the hardware store transferred to a cousin, I chose not to return to the city. Quarry Hill may creak and the attic may teem with receipts, yet it is a house whose foundations were built by a man who, faced with a cent, decided to stay here among imperfect things. Marla moved in come October. We hang gutters meticulously before the rainy season. We measure seconds between flash and boom. Sometimes, in the pitch of night when thunder transforms the windows into mirrors, I think I glimpse twin silhouettes on the glass, waiting for us to misstep. I nod to them, acknowledging the unfinished choreography, and turn away. I believe the bridge remains, coiled in the heart of the next storm. It will always exist for those who think light can free them from shadow, or shadow from light. But on the ledger of those who climb and those who do not, Dad wrote only one line that mattered: survivor. One. He taught me survival is less about victory than refusal. Refusal to let any half of yourself claim the whole. The ravine is quiet on clear days. Creek water glints in sun. A normal bridge spans it now, courtesy of county funds, oak beams and steel brackets. Kids toss stones from its railings. Lovers carve initials in the posts. Marla and I walk there sometimes and look at the place where the storm bridge anchors would appear if they ever touched dirt. But the earth is unmarred. No sign of cables, no scorch marks. Only wildflowers that bloom brighter after each rain. We watch the sky, measure clouds, and carry our shadows home at dusk. They are heavier than lightning forged, but they are ours, and they fit just right when the lights go out.